All right, so the day has finally come. I'm excited again. It's been a long time since we've seen any work done to this car, but with the way that the painter is lined up, I got to kind of hustle on it now. So I'm going to be on this entirely. Most likely I'll be just doing this shell until I have the shell ready for paint, and then I'll be back on the pink one because I just got some time frame that I got to do this shell in to get it to paint, to be able to get this thing done this year, as soon as I can into this year, so I am able to get it on the market sooner. So I'm gonna hustle on it for the next couple weeks here. I'm hoping I can have the shell done in the next 6 weeks. That's my goal. So I'm gonna be cranking out videos on this car as much as possible, showing you all the work that I'm doing. So for today's video, let's jump around to the back. I'm actually gonna be working on the back end first and then the front last, which is different than how I normally do it, but just thinking about this car, brainstorming, this is the best that I came up with on the idea, on the process, on building this car. So basically with the 1-inch body drop that I did on the car, the floor pan is up into the car an inch higher, so I got to drop the mounting points for all the quarter locations an inch different on this floor pan section for the trunk floors. So basically what I'm going to do, you can see I drilled out these spot welds already that were from the manufacturer here. I'm going to cut on this top edge line to cut this side drop off on both sides. I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to trace it, add that 1.1 inch. I'm going to give it actually a little bit more so I can trim it up later so I have extra all the way around. I'm also going to bead roll just a couple lines in it to make it similar, but just to make it a little bit different. Gonna roll those and then weld them back on, and then also where the taillight panel is mounting the whole way across, I'm gonna cut on this upper side here the whole way across, knock that piece off, make a new piece that is that 1.1 inch longer, put a 90 degree on the top. I'm gonna weld it on the top side, and then I'll re-drill a couple of the holes for the taillight panel, because that helps me align it at first until I get it correct. So that's what I'm going to be starting on first. Cutting those off, making the new pieces, bead roll those couple lines, weld them on, and then after that I'm going to be fitting the entire back end of this car. So the back end of this car is going to come together pretty quickly as far as the structural end. Taillight panel, and I screw everything together before I weld anything, so the taillight panel will get set in place. The quarters, I'll test fit the outer wheelhouses, maybe just clamp them in place. I'll knock out the inner wheelhouses because it is getting a mini tub. And then after those are all set in place, I'll weld them all the way around into place so nothing can move, and then we'll move on from there. So we'll see how far we can get in today's video. We'll at least get all of these sections done, and we should be able to start prepping some of the panels that you can see over there. The new quarters and taillight panel, so we'll prep those to get ready to go on. So let's fire up the plasma cutter and start cutting. Just to show you where I'm at now, as you can see, I cut out with the plasma cutter the tracings of the old pieces with the extensions that I needed on them. So I have drop-offs, and just to give you context, these are 16 gauge steel. Now we have a new left and right. I drew my lines in them where I want to put a bead roll in them, and I kind of stepped them down like they did in the originals, with the big one at the front because it is a larger span. So I have that span being 7 inches, 6 inches, 5 inches, just to give it a little bit of pizzazz to it. and it helps with the structure of it also. So I have those lines marked. I have my upper line where I'm going to put a 90-degree bend to where I'm going to weld on the top of the trunk drop-off location. And I also have a 1/4 inch that I'm going to bend on this panel for where the taillight panel is going to meet. So what I'm going to do now is go over to the sheet metal brake and the bead roller, put these bends in them, bead roll them, and then we'll be back over to here to clamp them in place, and then we'll be welding them. So I went along and cleaned up the edges where I plasma cut because it does leave a burr on the back side. So I cleaned everything up all the way around so it's ready to go. So let's head over to the sheet metal brake. Now I'm finally at the point where I'm going to start prepping the quarter panels, which I just set the first one out. Taillight panel, the trunk corners, all this back end pieces. I'm going to prep everything by putting the holes in that get welded, and then I'll start fitting that stuff on. But just to show you the back end here, after I got all this metal work done, you can see the trunk drop-offs that I put those, I bead rolled those lines in there, overlapped on the top side and ground them down, and then in the end that'll get seam sealer put onto it and blend that in top and bottom, so you'll never be able to know that it was really changed. But I have the taillight panel area extended, that's all on, ground down the other side, and I went ahead and I put the holes in a while for the backup lights, so that's done. And also I figured, thinking on it, I cut the wheelhouses out a while, just so I don't have to once I have the quarters set in place, just because it makes it a little bit easier to maneuver everything and twist it to where I need it to be. So I went ahead, cut them out a while, and I also notched out this transition panel a little bit, which will need done more in the future once I set those mini tubs in, because it actually requires me to cut out pretty far into here, right up onto that frame rail line. So we'll do that later on after the entire back end is fitted up. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm definitely happy with how all that turned out. So now I did the taillight panel a while. So just to kind of show you, I put the holes in it where I'm going to weld and prep all of that. And also I prepped the center section because I'm doing something a little bit different with the gas cap, which you'll see here coming up. And now I'm going to do the same exact thing to the quarters. Going to put the holes in it and get them ready to go on the car. That's all the farther I'm going to get today on it, which I got way farther than I thought I would. And I would be farther, but I've been messing with the quarter extensions on the passenger side for the last 2 hours probably. Yeah, it's just, that's the problem with aftermarket stuff sometimes. But I didn't adjust the doors yet, but I got the gaps to where they should be. So now I'll just have to adjust the quarter and the door to match each other on both sides. And then I tack it in place for now. But you can see on this side, the quarter extension and the trunk lid actually aren't that bad. There's a little bit of room. I gotta move the quarter out a little bit. And then on this side, it was just terrible. The aftermarket one was completely shaped wrong. So I have an original that fits much better, but the curve on the trunk isn't nearly the same as the aftermarket stuff. There's less of a curve on the aftermarket parts. It seems to be aftermarket parts like to fit to aftermarket parts. That just seems to be the general thing that I've found out through doing all these cars. But yeah, so lots was done. Moving on, tomorrow I'm going to be working on these quarters again, trying to figure out this. I may have to go get another aftermarket extension piece just to see if that one's just a junk one, and hopefully the next one could be better. Or I'm going to keep trying to mess with the original one that I have to try and get that to fit as best as it can. Onto the rear valence, I got to fit that and bring in my quarters to wherever they need to be to fit the rear valence. So then the back end will be all lined up. Like I said, I got to fine tune the doors, and then the back end could be welded in place. I'll also probably test fit in the outer wheelhouses just to make sure that everything's okay there. And then before I actually really weld in the back wheelhouses, I would like to put the suspension on it and test fit my wheels just to make sure that I got the size of a wheel that I really want. And then after that, I'll probably be working my way forward, doing the aprons, rad support, all the front end pieces, and I got to test fit my suspension there also. And then I'll weld in wheelhouses and then move on doing fenders and all that kind of stuff. And there's a bunch of little things here and there that I'm going to do also to change things on this car. So glad to be back on this. I'm sorry if I'm just a little frustrated because that quarter extension was killing me today. But That's how these things go. If you're doing one yourself, I'm sure you've found that out in the process. But thanks for watching this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe if you're not. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.